This is CaneSport Inside the Lines on the Ourlads Football Network as we wrap up a huge spanking by Miami on Duke football. And most importantly, preview a even bigger matchup with North Carolina, which could cement the Miami Hurricanes in third place in the ACC behind potential playoff teams Clemson and Notre Dame. How's everything going, Mr. Gary Furman?
Everything's great. I mean, it's a festival of happiness here in Miami. You blow out Duke. You got North Carolina coming in. It's the game of the year that people have had circled on their calendars and have looked forward to. And we get to really see a really good progress report of how far these Hurricanes have come this year. We think they've come a long way. Now they're playing a team that's a little bit more dangerous than some of the other ones that they've played this year, and they've struggled with some of those, but this one brings an offense to the table that's a little bit of a different beast, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they hold up defensively.
Yeah, not much to talk about in the Duke matchup, and that's a good thing. And we talked about that last week, the need after the previous 3 games decided by 9 points or less, 9 points total, and the need for Miami to be in the second half, going into the fourth quarter, where you can rest your starters and just feel good about not having to come up with big plays or hope that you get a bad call. And that's exactly what happened. It took a little bit, and that's definitely expected because of the COVID mini break. They looked rusty early. They had the night and early fumble, but you kind of knew even early when they were struggling offensively that the defense was on top of their game from the outset, because right after they gave up the fumble, Duke goes 3 and out. Miami was like, not going to have any of this. And that was pretty much the ball game. And Miami did a really good job stuffing the run against Duke, which is something that we also talked that was important because Duke just doesn't have a passing game.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week, Greg. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind. Duke was not. I was amazed that the Duke administration took the game. To be honest with you, I mean, they were so downtrodden. They'd given up 56 points 2 weeks in a row. They were 2-7. I mean, they were done. I mean, you look at everything, with the coronavirus and everything, just to try to get the games week to week and all that. Those kids were finished. They were never invested in that game, and it was great for Miami to pad stats, build confidence for this week's game. But I wouldn't attach too much more significance than that. The body of work over the entire season speaks for itself. Miami, to me, has done, and it's a tribute to Manny Diaz, really, as good a job managing all the issues that you have to manage with the coronavirus as really probably any program in the country. And they've showed up every week and gotten the job done no matter who was able to play. I mean, obviously guys tested positive. I mean, I look around me in the real world, people are testing positive every 5 minutes. So there's a lot of coronavirus going around, a lot of uncertainty for these football teams and players. But Miami, to me, has handled it as well as anybody, and that's never shown off better than at Duke the other night, where you had one team show up energetic, enthusiastic, clearly having a good time, and you had the other team that unquestionably had no interest in being there.
It was also nice to see the running game get going. Cameron Harris with 15 for 96 and 2 touchdowns. We also saw Donald Chaney with 9 for 62, adding 481 through the air. So that's what you get when you open up your depth chart and you see what your other, younger players get an opportunity to step out there. And that was what was important too. I mean, that's why we thought it was important for this team, not just for the starters, but it was also nice to see some of the backups get a little bit more reps. And it was also nice for them to pitch a shutout. Cause like I said, this is a team that had 2 600-yard rushers, and Miami held Duke 33 attempts, 56 yards, and a 1.7 average. So they just dominated the game like they were supposed to. It's easier said than done. That's why it was an impressive thing for us to see at this stage of the season, is Miami do exactly what they needed to do. So now we could turn our attention to North Carolina, and they could turn their attention to North Carolina, which is going to be a huge matchup.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Listen, North Carolina is on the ascent, similar to what we're hoping Miami is, and they're not there yet. Their defense is highly questionable. I think Miami is going to be able to move the ball on them quite a bit, score a lot of points. To me, this game is first to 40 wins because I'm expecting Carolina to be able to move the ball on Miami as well. And it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a good test for the Hurricanes, I think. They should win the game. They have them at home. Miami's defense, I think, is better than Carolina's defense. But it's one of those games where you got to go out and prove it because the other team is capable of doing some things. And I like the test really for Miami's defense because I think Miami's defense has been getting better as the season has gone along this year. And they're ready to be challenged to this degree.
Yeah, this is no. I mean, right now you take a look at the schedule, and with the season ending after Georgia Tech, this is the second toughest opponent that
Of
Miami's
the whole
faced.
season,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
So,
Without
and the
question.
point spread tells you that they're only a 3-point favorite for a reason. And this is one of those games where if you are really a top 10 program and you're the type of team that's not a fraud, you have taken a next step. You have put yourself in a position where, you know what, maybe we should have been in the ACC championship game, that kind of thing. This is the type of game that you have to go out there and win because this is a really, like you're saying, this is a very talented offensive football team. Very talented.
Yeah, I mean they really are. I mean they average 41 points a game, 535 yards. Their yardage ranks fifth in the
Yep.
nation. I mean this is a team that can move up and down the football field. Sam Howell is on a rapid ascent as one of the better quarterbacks in the country. Very accurate passer. If you give him time, he's going to rip you apart.
He's going to be a
I think
top
Miami.
prospect in the 2022 draft.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't know if he'll be the number one pick, but because of the size, but he will be a very highly regarded pro prospect without question. Uh, Notre Dame, I thought, laid out the blueprint for defending Sam Howell and the North Carolina offense, and they came with a lot of pressure. And that's where he breaks down a little bit. Like any quarterback, he's nowhere near as good when he's got guys harassing him than when he doesn't. So I expect Miami to come after him pretty good. And when North Carolina is able to pick it up, that's going to leave some openings in the secondary. And I think North Carolina is going to score some points in this game. So it's going to be, without question, in my mind, the most exciting game of the year. I mean, the Clemson game was a big game for Miami, but they weren't really competitive in that game. They're going to be competitive in this one, Greg. And you're going to see teams that really can put points on the board, can dial up big plays, and it's going to be fun to watch. Too bad the stadium's going to be, 4/5 empty.
Yeah.
But at least the people watching on TV will have a lot of fun.
And North Carolina, like you said, the positive is that they're fifth in total offense. The negative is they're 88th in pass defense. So this is a big positive for De'Ara King, who's having a fantastic season. An 89-yard touchdown pass to Hartley against Duke. Another big game with 3 touchdowns in that one. It was nice to see Jordan get into the action finally early in the game against Duke as well, because as we've been talking about, if now as you step up and you play these types of teams and you have to score as many points as you can, because like you said, this is going to be a high scoring game. You need every potential superstar skill position player you have on the team, because North Carolina has a boatload of them. They're a more talented team, North Carolina is, on offense. They got a lot of pro prospects on offense. They have game breakers left and right. Miami, yeah, it's nice to see Hartley and Wiggins and Pope and these guys mature this season. But North Carolina, they've got a little bit more talent, and that's why it's going to be important for Miami to keep pace with them, which we expect they will.
Maybe a little bit more seasoned talent right now on the offensive side.
Offensive only, yes.
Yeah, but Miami has really been coming, and you look at the way they've developed Mike Harley, for example, and the games that he's put up in the last month. The running backs are playing very, very well. I don't know that they're going to match North Carolina's two. I mean, when you look at these guys, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, I mean, what a tandem. Yeah. I mean, Carter's got 937 yards and 7 touchdowns. Williams has 904 yards and 16 touchdowns. One's averaging 7 yards a carry, the other one's averaging 6.7 yards a carry. So these are guys that can make big plays
Absolutely.
and move the ball down the field very quickly. And they're very strong at the wideout position too. So Miami's going to be stressed at every level and of their defense, totally across the football field. And the guys that you think have been making progress on that side of the ball, the Corey Couches of the world, you see the way the defensive ends have played the last few weeks. And, everyone's excited about, Quincy Roche and Jalen Phillips, and they both had very good years. But when you look at their sack totals, Greg, Roche, I think, has 4 sacks, 4.5 sacks. Phillips with the big 3, I think he had 3 against Duke, now is up to 6. But that is pale in comparison to what even Greg Rousseau did last year in a half a season when he had 15 sacks, really playing part-time the first half of the season.
Yeah.
So, I think the best way to describe it is you've got guys that are now, I think, getting into their best shape of the season. They're playing their best football, and now they get an opponent on the other sideline that is going to test them to the max. And I love it. I love these types of games where you have to really play well to win and show what you're capable of. And I'm looking forward to seeing Miami rise to the occasion and prove to all of us on Saturday that they have made significant progress this year,
Right.
that they have not just been playing average teams all season, and that's why they have an 8-1 record right now.
Yeah, and when you take a look at the Clemson matchup, it was all about the inefficiency of the offense because it wasn't like the defense was allowing Clemson to move up and down the field all day long. The defense held their own. It was up to the offense to do their part. They didn't. I don't expect that's going to be the issue here against North Carolina. So that's why, as you were saying, we're going to see a high-scoring game, but it's also going to be upon the defense to do what they have done most of this season in these big games when they've been able to come back, especially, and that is in the second half, in the fourth quarter, make the big stop. Because they're going to, if you're a fan out there, maybe you haven't seen a lot of North Carolina, maybe you have, maybe you saw the Notre Dame game. That's not a true representation of what you're going to get with North Carolina's offense. You're going to give up points. They're going to score. They're going to make big plays. But when you get to the third quarter and the fourth quarter, that's when it's important that Miami come up with some big plays like they have just a short while ago against North Carolina State and Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and something's going to have to give in that regard. I mean, when you look at Sam Howell in North Carolina, they've been great in the fourth quarter. You can go back to the Miami game last year where he pulled it out down the stretch. He was down the 4th and 17. He hits the 4th and 17, takes them to the end zone. They win the game. And he's done that multiple times this year.
Yep.
I mean, he's been a big-time player late in the game. Even when they've lost, he's played his best football in the second half. So something's going to have to give in that regard. But the difference in this game from the Clemson game, Greg, is against Clemson, Miami just wasn't as good. They're as good as North Carolina. They're probably even a little bit further along right now than North Carolina. North Carolina may catch up in another year or so. They're recruiting like maniacs up there. Mac Brown's doing a great job bringing that program back. You look at the way Sam Howell and the offense are playing, and you can get kind of lulled to sleep about where they're coming from. This is a team that the couple years before Mac Brown got there was not winning very many football games.
No.
So they're coming. They're one of those ACC teams that's on the rise. Miami feels that it is too. But Miami doesn't have to look across the field and say, we don't match up with these guys. When they played Clemson, it was pretty obvious from the opening kickoff that they did not match up with those guys. Clemson was a significantly better football team and really could just about do whatever it wanted. That won't be the case Saturday.
And I think it's a good point because if Miami had played Clemson again in the ACC championship game, I think it's a different story. That's how much Miami has grown since the last matchup. I'm not saying they beat them, but you wouldn't get the type of play that you got the first time around where it looked like they were just out of sorts. Maybe the spotlight was too big, whatever the case may be. They are a completely different team than the team that went into Death Valley that earlier this year.
To a degree, but Clemson's still significantly better. Like the right two teams are playing in the ACC championship game.
Sure.
Clemson, Notre Dame, they were clearly the best in the ACC this year. The fact that Miami has come from being where it was in December to being the third best team in the conference, I think is progress. I think it's undeniable. This is a good bounce back year. And now, as we get past these last couple games and we move into recruiting next week and signing day and then move beyond that, to me, the key for the Hurricanes is going to be how they build on this.
First home game since October 24th. It's also the first road game for North Carolina since November the 7th. So you have one team that hasn't played at home for a while, one team that hasn't played on the road for a while. And considering Miami has continued to win, that is a good thing for Miami. And we talked about them clinching third place with a win in the ACC. You know, unless something really weird happens against Georgia Tech, if they win this game, not only do they clinch third, but I feel pretty confident they clinch the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, the only thing that could possibly change that would be if Notre Dame were to beat Clemson again, and that would probably knock Clemson out of the Final Four, and then Clemson would probably go to the Orange Bowl in that situation, and Miami would be sitting there to go elsewhere. But
that's unlikely.
But certain, they could still end up in a January 1 bowl game, even in that scenario if they're sitting there with one loss. But at that point, maybe the Orange Bowl would get Clemson, and then Miami would go somewhere else, or it could go the other way. Really, it depends what the Orange Bowl wants. But yeah, that's the way it's looking. It's looking like they're headed probably to the Orange Bowl to play maybe the loser of the SEC championship game.
That would be nice.
And that would be a great bowl game. You get Alabama or Florida. Probably Florida in that situation. I think a lot of people would be very interested to see a Miami-Florida bowl.
That'd be great to see Derek King go up against Kyle Trask. That would be excellent.
Yeah.
First things first, take care of business against this North Carolina team. By the way, speaking of the need to match up with North Carolina and the passing game, talked about Howell. De'Ami Brown, the junior receiver, is having a big year. And they also have Daz Newsome. Daz is a big-time returner, so you got to keep an eye on him in the return game because Miami's done a good job of special teams so far this year. But those are two big-time weapons. And the running backs also. I think they've combined, the top two guys you mentioned, combined for like 46 receptions. So they're going to catch a lot of passes too. But as far as the secondary, no Al Blades. That's a tough deal. Tough deal for the kid as well.
Yeah, a lot of people take coronavirus for granted. Like I know a lot of people. They're on our CaneSport.com message boards and things like. They think the whole thing's a joke. Well, when you see this, it hits home. It's not a joke. Al Blades, great kid. Feel for him. Hope he gets well soon. But yeah, he got coronavirus. And then while they were treating him for the symptoms and things of coronavirus, and they did some tests, they found that he had, I guess it's inflammation of the heart or whatever, that myocarditis. And he's going to have to take it easy for several months. So, he's not going to be able to play football. It could even linger into a potential spring practice if they decide to try to have spring practice this year. They canceled it last year, obviously. I'd have to say that's 50-50 at best if you really look at the way things are and where they figure to be in March and April still. But, that's another story. But, Al's going to have to, be treated and take it easy. And was one of two relatively experienced cornerbacks on this team this year. And now you're not going to have him against the best passing team you're playing. And that's has to show up at some point in this game, I would think. Corey Couch has been playing much, much better the past several weeks. Hopefully he'll be ready for full-time duty. DJ Ivey has been hit or miss through much of the year, and there's only freshmen behind them. So if I'm North Carolina, I'm sitting there. I don't care what I got to do. I got to protect Sam Howell, and I got to get the ball to my wideouts against these corners. And that's what I think they're going to try. They're going to hope to do. They might even keep a tight end to help block at times against these defensive ends. I could see them keeping backs in the backfield to pick up blitzers. I think they're going to feel real good about the matchups that they have on the outside and try to exploit those.
All right, let's take a look at some of the game trends, team trends, and so forth. Miami 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread at home this year. So far, so good. They've won all 7 of their games this season as a favorite, and they've covered 5 of those 7. And
And you got a manageable line. The line's manageable,
yes,
right, Greg? I mean,
absolutely.
with the 3.5.
Yep, through 3 right now. So,
Yeah.
yep,
So I mean, it's a manageable line. I mean, I'd be a little scared to lay more than that
sure.
because of all the scoring that's going to take
Oh,
place
yeah. I'm not even
and
sure
this.
this is a game you wager on, because this is just one of those games that's probably coming down to the fourth quarter, probably
Yeah.
coming down to the last possession.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm betting, I'm going to bet Miami just because I feel Miami's defense is better than North
Sure.
Carolina's
I
defense.
agree. I agree.
But beyond that, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you don't have to bet it,
Just
you
enjoy
don't.
the game.
Correct.
As far as North Carolina, now, when I looked at all the trends and everything and the stats, it does favor Miami. Let's go through some of these. North Carolina has dropped 3 straight covers. They are 2-2 on the road, just 1-3 against the spread on the road. Here's some interesting trends that work against North Carolina. They are 0-4 against the spread their last 4 games after a straight up win. So they haven't followed up their straight up wins with another convincing win. They're 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 as a road dog of less than 7. So they go on the road, they're a dog, it's a short price, and they haven't been able to cover that recently. And more importantly, in their last 9 versus ranked teams, as well as their last 9 as a dog of less than 21, going up against a team with a winning percentage of 750 or greater, which is kind of the combination of the ranked teams and the winning percentage. The bottom line, when they play the really good teams, so 1-8 straight up last 9 versus ranked teams, that's not very good for North Carolina, and 1-8 against the spread in their last 9 as dogs of less than 21, as I was mentioning, versus teams with a winning percentage of 750 or greater. That includes 0-1 this year. The only time they faced that was against Notre Dame, and they did not cover
I
that game.
You know, I think that's evidence, Greg, of what I said a little earlier, in that this is a dangerous team because of its offense, but it is not a team that is totally put together
No,
yet.
no,
And
no.
it was not in very good shape when Mac Brown came back last year. And it's going to take him, another recruiting class or two to really get it the way he would want it.
Yep. Matter of fact, this is only the second time that North Carolina is a dog this season. So the schedule hasn't been very tough for North Carolina. And the only time they were a dog, they lost to Notre Dame. Now,
The ACC isn't very tough,
no,
but
that's true.
the schedule's not tough for
Yeah,
anybody.
that's
You
true.
got a bunch of average teams in this conference once you get past the top 2 or 3, and Miami's been life or death to beat some of them. So Miami might be a little bit of a notch above most of those teams this year because of De'Ara King, but they're not that far above, and that's been evidenced by the way some of those games went.
Now I'm going to give you the weird trend of the week for North Carolina, for Miami's opponent, but it's actually shown that it's working against North Carolina twice this season. So North Carolina has dropped 9 straight covers after they score 35 or more points when they take on their next opponent, who comes into the game with back-to-back straight up and against the spread wins. So they're coming off North Carolina, an easy win against Western Carolina, which sets them up in this situation. They scored 49. That's the 35 we're talking about. And Miami's won and covered their last 2 straight up and against the spread. This year, North Carolina's been in this spot twice. They've lost both. So against the spread. So again, 9 straight covers North Carolina has lost in that specific trend. And then we're going to wrap up with the series trends. The home team is just 4-4 in the last 8, but the home team has covered 7 of the last 8 in this series. And overall, Miami 3-2 straight up, 4-1 against the spread. Their last 5 at home against North Carolina. So a lot of stats and trends that do seem to favor Miami in this one.
Yeah, it sounds like they're all pointing to Miami, and that's really the way I see it. Also, I think that it will be a shootout, but I think Miami's defense will be able to get 1 or 2 more stops than Carolina's defense, and that'll be the difference in the game.
Yeah, and sometimes we look into certain stats and this and that and all this weird science, analytics and such. when you just do the basics and you say, okay, here you have a team, you have two teams that are trying to make their way and so forth, and you obviously mentioned how bad North Carolina had where they were with the program just a short while ago, and we just told you North Carolina, they haven't done a very good job when they've had to step up in competition. Miami has this season already grown up. They've learned how to win. And even though they didn't beat Clemson, they're winning big games where they're coming back and, and they're making sure that they can put opponents away when they have to. There's a certain air of confidence right now with this program. I don't think North Carolina, sure, I think they're confident in their abilities, but in the fourth quarter, I think you have two different mindsets. I think you have one in Miami where I think they know they can win. I don't think
You
North
know what it
Carolina knows
is?
they can win.
You know what it is? It's the older impact players on the team. It's the transfers that came in here as kids that had played a lot of college football, and they're just further along than younger players who did not participate in a spring practice last year. And I just don't think teams have been able to develop
Yep.
their rosters the way they normally would without all that practice time. And the older kids that have already been developed have an advantage, and that's what Miami's team is built around this year. The older kids, the transfers, the Kings, the Phillips, the Rochers, the Bubba Boldens, these kids that are a little older and a little bit more football mature are the ones making the difference in the ball games, and that's, I think, been a big deal for Miami.
All right, Gary. So next week it's Georgia Tech, and I know we're further along than we normally are because usually you have everybody's done by November except the championship games, so you have these long breaks before bowls. But once you're done with Georgia Tech, and let's just say everything, whether that goes right or not, Miami's going to be in a good bowl. There's not much time. What is it going to be? A couple of weeks between bowls, between games?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It looks like you have 2 weeks between the end of the season and the bowl game, which I think is
Yeah,
great.
that's a good thing.
Why make them sit around for a month
Yeah,
after all
right.
this?
Well, hopefully
Yeah,
they'll change that on their own at some point in the future, but at least there's one thing we could take advantage of this year.
yeah.
All right, Gary, thanks a lot. We'll talk and recap the big game next week and also preview the final regular season game against Georgia Tech.
All right, Greg, looking forward to that.